Hey, everybody, welcome to Growing Up Chestnut. I'm your host, Mike, and this is my beloved sister, Becky. Beloved. I like beloved a whole lot better than beautiful because Amber's been getting jealous. None of my sister. I don't know. Anyways, we have a special guest tonight that we're going to introduce to you right now, and that is Donnie Noble. How are you doing, Donnie?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Well, we're doing pretty good. We get the
Yeah,
technical stuff together.
it's a bit of a hassle.
Just a little. We've only been trying for about a half hour.
It's all right. What's time when you're old?
Yes. Well, we got to get the frame just right to get you looking good too. You and Becky.
You ain't got a chance of that. So
I'm always fussing. You can't make me thinner, so.
that's the way it is. I'm hoping to hold this back a little bit. you know, you know how that goes.
So I remember my first recollection of your family coming to our house, and I don't know if you and Becky can remember this far back or not, but that I remember you guys coming, and we had the ping pong table down in our basement. And as soon as we got home from school, we were all down there playing ping pong and everything else. And then when you first came, your brother was with them too.
Yeah, I wasn't there for some reason. First time that they came, I don't think.
I think we had you put away.
Probably. I don't remember where I was at, but was it the second time?
Was that the second time?
No. Just go.
Okay, we'll go.
What year was that?
I don't remember what year that was. I had to be probably 8, 9 years old when that happened, and I'm 56 now, so over 45 years ago.
Right.
so.
Probably around 75, 76 in that area.
Yeah.
That's what I tell
1975, not 1875.
Yeah, because I was there.
I'll do it. Huh?
So,
Jamie.
anyways, Jamie's over here bugging us.
That's what we're doing wrong.
Yes, everyone has to have a Jamie in their life. But I remember when you guys came, we had a lot of fun, and I remember we had your sister on, Christy, which I think the whole Noble family was like on the edge of their seat for that interview.
I was too, because I had them both. Neither one had a filter, so I was scared. I'll be honest. But it turned out all right.
It did turn out all right. But in it, I remember when you were there, you devastated me because one of my goldfish that I had, it was a kissing fish. It wasn't a goldfish. It was a kissing fish. Jumped out of my fish tank, and Donnie Noble squished it while playing ping pong.
Do you remember that?
That was your recollection of it?
That's my recollection of it, because me and Chrissy did a funeral for it in the toilet in the downstairs for the fish. But yeah,
it probably did happen like that. Some things that are traumatic in life, you try to forget. At least you do your best.
Well, I feel like now that I've got it off my chest, I'll be able to move forward.
That has to feel really, really weird to step on.
It did, because it cracked. You could hear it go when he stepped on it. We were all like, "What was that?" And one of my fish had jumped out of the tank. It was really, or one of our cats had knocked it out of the tank, which is probably more right with it. But we wanted to ask you, what are some of the funniest stories you guys had while you were on the road that you could share with us?
Well, we started traveling, we'll say 1973. Seemed like June or so of 73. Mom knows the dates. She has all that. Yeah. But we went out to Fort Worth, and I think Dad thought early in his ministry he was out there, and I thought he had or his thinking was they probably had a lot of buddies out there that would use our family in evangelism, and it never happened. It never happened. The ministry kind of took off for our family when we went up to Greenfield, Indiana, and preached at a pastor's conference. Our dad preached, we sang, and booked a lot of meetings out of that. And a lot of churches were hungry for family style worship services or revivals, however people want to term it anymore. And we met a lot of fantastic people. I have absolutely the best memories of my childhood growing up, because we never stayed at one place long enough to really get to know the bad side of anybody. You know, whenever you came for a revival or went to camp meeting, everybody was on their best behavior. So we didn't get the bad reports from churches and deacons and all the stuff that would later on go on. But grandkids coming out the door. But anyway, we met just the greatest people, the best friends that you grew up you're still connected to after 50 plus years. You know, you're still connected to them in some way. But yeah, there's a lot of stories that we look back now, and I remark about how we persevered through stuff. You know, we lived in that bus and didn't realize when we went up to Indiana in the wintertime what the wintertime was like, because wintertime in West Texas was not a big deal. But we went to Indiana and you woke up, you know, in the middle of the night and your pillow's frozen to the window where you were sleeping, and just you'd wake up and the water was frozen because we used the garden hose, and so just a lot of the trials and stuff that we just persevered through. And when we were younger, you never thought nothing about it. You know, you were just almost bulletproof. You just kept on going, and I didn't think about the buses not running or engine being froze up. Dad would always take care of all that. He was a great preacher, but he was a better than average mechanic. And so we met a lot of people, but probably our favorite places were to go to camp there at Versailles. We always enjoyed going to Versailles. That was a highlight. And did y'all ever get to go to Sand Mountain down in Sand Mountain, Georgia, at Brother Vault's camp?
My mom and dad did. We never got to go, but I heard stories. I mean, Tammy, Greg's wife, Kathleen Chestnut, she went a lot, and we heard a lot about it, but we never got to experience it.
Yeah, that was a great place to be. But like I say, we met a lot of great people, a lot of lifelong friends. In fact, Harold, I talked to him the other night. He was out at Roger Wagner's church in Cleveland, Tennessee, is where Roger's at now. But he was at Patriot. Man, that was a fun place to be because they were all insane. Roger included. He was something else, man. He was just one of the favorite people to ever hang around with because he wasn't much older than us, and he was pastoring. I would say he's probably he may be 7 years older than me or something, 6 years old, 8 years older. But when we went there, he was such a young guy. But every time he would brag about doing something like that, and me and Harold and Blake, we would just take him down because he was our age, and we loved him and respected him. But he would drive over to a revival meeting somewhere else and brag about how he could do this and how he could. And what we would do is we would go out and steal his car and park it around the corner. And then when Roger would come out of church or out of the house after fellowship, he couldn't find his car. And I just remember that one time he came in bragging to Dad about how he put his keys in his coat and didn't tell the kids where nothing was. And we got his coat and got his keys and moved his car and then put the keys back in his coat. And when he walked outside, he had his keys, bragging about how he had hid his keys from us, and walked out. There was no car there. We just had a great time with people like that. It was just, man, to go up to y'all's folks' church there in Oswego. Uh, we didn't really know how good we had it. You know, when when you get older and you become the parent or the grandparent in our case now, and you realize, you look back at those times and you think, man, the people that you met and the things that we did, even even as fundamental Baptist preachers' kids, the things that we could do and not try to get by with anything, because we didn't get by with anything. You couldn't sneak out of our house because Dad slept at the front door. So you were pretty much landlocked on that.
Yeah.
But just the time of our life growing up. Uh, I think back when Mom and Dad went into evangelism, uh, how it was a family event, how it was a family affair going into that. They talked to us about it, and I didn't realize, I was 11 years old. I didn't realize what they were doing. Things were over my head, but I just trusted them. And man, I look back now and I think what faith they had to step out to go and do whatever, get on the evangelistic trail. And we'd never met y'all. We'd never met Roger Wagner, James Brown, just so many, Lyman Taylor, the Harlan Barnett family, just people that you didn't know they were there, but you were so kin to them in your life. It was just the coolest thing. Just the games you'd play and the basketball that we played, growing around the country. Me and Harold and Blake, we were pretty good as threesome together because they were both big, and we'd take on teams from churches, and it was just a blast growing up. You always hear people say, "Well, I regret this in my life, and I didn't have a good childhood." I had the best childhood. The things that we got to do, and the people that we got to meet, and the places that we saw were just life changing.
Yeah. And I never, never even thought about how you guys got started and, the challenges of that, because when you guys came to our church,
You were the first
you were
family.
you were the first family. I remember when your guys'
Evangelism,
bus
so.
came pulling in, we were like, wow, they are somebody. Here came this big bus in of these music people, had this PA system. And I
Right.
remember like your mom was the first person I ever heard who could, play the piano
Right
like
here and
she
sing.
did, and
And she's a
just,
beautiful woman.
and the bass guitar, Harold playing the bass guitar. We never, it got a guitar in there, we were like, and you guys had harmony, stuff like that.
When we traveled, when Dad told us we were going to go on the road, we'd sang once in a while as a family quartet, but never like we did when we went on the road. But that bus was a 1952 model. That thing was so old. Dad painted it himself outside, and when we took it on the road, the first printing on that bus, he'd written the Singing Evangelistic Noble Family, and it was just a mouthful. When people people would pass us on the highway trying to read it, and they'd read the whole line, Singing Evangelistic Noble Family. If you passed the wrong way, though, you were reading Family Noble Evangelistic Singing Thee. So you had to put it all backwards. But a great life, wonderful, wonderful friends that you just grew up, people that we're still in touch with on a really regular basis. And then 1979 came along, and I married Sherry, and we moved out of evangelism, and that was a life changing thing for us again. Because Sherry was used to being, in a house and no travel, but I wasn't used to that. So being still was a change. So
I imagine that was an adjustment.
it was, but man, we did so much and uh, enjoyed enjoyed churches after churches after churches. Now, the one thing I don't, and I still don't like it, and I won't hardly do it now, even at our church, because I'm pastoring Oak Grove Baptist Church here in the Good Spring, Tennessee area, is the after church dinners, the pitch-in dinners. You remember those?
Yeah.
Those are awful. I mean, those are awful. Man, we went to some down in Louisiana that
Shoe fly pie, meatloaf.
you know how it was. Everybody wanted you to taste their cooking, and their shoe fly pie was the best you'd ever tasted, and it was easily the best I'd ever tasted because I'd never tasted it before. But man, some of the churches we went to, you know, that every church wanted to have a pitch-in dinner after the revival was over, and for them it was a once in a year thing, but for us it was every week we were eating it.
Yeah.
What I liked with our mom, and she learned this with you guys, was she told Dad, no, we're not having these people cook for them. So Mom would cook a meal, and we had a big dining room where our whole family sat. And I remember when you guys first came, it was the first time really our parents had entertained an evangelist family. You guys were the first evangelist family we had come in, and our parents got along so well. And I remember Mom jumped up, started telling stories, and she was acting out. We'd never seen our mom do that before. And we're sitting there like, what has got into her? But when we met your family, it was really great because it was like we all got along really well. And I know it was a fresh breath from my parents with meeting your parents, because in being a pastor's family, sometimes you feel alone, even though you're located in one spot. But when you guys came in, we all had similar experiences because we were in ministry together.
We were telling, I don't know if you remember, we were telling mommy jokes. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do.
All around the table. Our parents were sitting there, we're just talking and we're doing all these mommy. You know, and I was like, this is cool. Nobody getting after us, just letting us go.
Yeah, that your folks did it the right way, because we went to people's houses every day for a meal, and sometimes it was clean, and most of the time it wasn't. You know, and mom would just tell us, look, pick what you want to eat, and if you're still hungry, when we go home, I'll fix you something. And she was always real good about that, because there was one church we went to, and when everybody bowed their head to pray for over the meal, they had always had the evangelist family come up. Y'all eat first. Oh, we'd love y'all to be our guests. But when they bowed their head to pray, and I don't remember who it was, Mom or somebody, saw a cockroach walking across the chicken, and it was like she elbowed me and said, "Don't eat the chicken." And we just passed it on down the family line. Don't eat the chicken. Don't eat the chicken. And but you just run into that kind of stuff that was just life-changing in a good way and in a bad way, I guess.
Yeah. And then I'm sure you would always have the same stuff at some places, like spaghetti, something easy to make, and there'd be some foods you had to get sick of.
Yeah, there was we kind of had a saying around the family, you know, because somebody would bring by a special dish. Oh man, you got to try this. This is you. So they'd bring it into the house, and they after church was over, you know, they'd say, "Man, how did you like that?" And we just came up with the thing of, man, food like that doesn't last long around our house. We didn't tell them we threw it out; it just didn't last long.
Yep.
That's how our family did.
Yeah, you just couldn't offend people, and we didn't want to. They did it with love in their hearts, and we know that. So there was never an issue with that. People loved you, and they wanted to help you for the most part. You know, there was always somebody that didn't, but you know how it goes.
Well, what was I mean, you hit so many great things that people don't even really think about being in evangelism and the joy. I bet you guys had, even though your dad was a good mechanic, you weren't with them for a long time after Harold and Jeannie got married, were you?
Yeah, we went into evangelism in '72, and me and Sherry got married in '79. So Harold, I think Harold separated a little bit. Him and Jeannie got married in 1975. So they got their own bus and they traveled and mostly traveled with us, but were separated to a certain point. Now, Harold. He was of the right age to watch Dad in the mechanics and learn all that kind of stuff, and Dad taught him well, and it sufficed him, many years down the road. I didn't care. I didn't care about mechanics. I didn't want to learn. I was more of a, what did the Cowboys do today, and uh, that kind of stuff. I didn't learn the mechanics like Harold did, but Dad and Harold were both great mechanics as far as keeping their own equipment running. They could figure it out. We had we had all kinds of mechanic books in our house where Mom would we'd come across a problem and Mom would thumb through that book till she found out, on a troubleshooting part of that, and then Dad would go outside and fix it. And God just kind of He gave them the great ability to use some common sense how to figure that kind of stuff out. And of course, Blake he left in, I want to say, about 1976 when he went to college. He went to college and kind of broke the family up a little bit by going to college, knowing that though that he was going to, he was going to cut his own path, and that was fine, even though at the time we didn't really understand that. But that's what he did, and in fact, Blake was always a little bit different. We were all at Steak and Shake ordering steak burgers. He would eat, spaghetti three ways, and he was just different. He just cut from different cloth, I guess. But we had growing up, we just had a great time. Uh, Traveling was never a burden. I just know the lessons that Mom and Dad taught us through uh, faith promise giving and uh, sowing and reaping. Those lessons they taught us, uh, lasted us forever. And
But they
and
didn't
we
just
still,
teach
we
you
still
guys
practice.
that. They taught that on the road. Your parents taught that to every church that they went to, and I know that's what our church taught on faith promise and did all that. And but they always did the sowing and reaping, and that would always excite me. I know personally, and then, but I know all over the country that everybody would, the Nobles, they were big about that. Everybody knew their testimony with that. So that's one thing I remember.
And we lived that out in the open. Back before social media was even a thought. We lived that out in the open. Before churches, mom taught. Uh, we always called it preaching. Mom preached to all the women in the churches at the meetings and stuff like that. And but we believed what we lived and still do. Uh, it's a great way to live. So much so that it's influenced our life. Here I am in my 60s and uh, still doing basically the same thing uh, for the next generation, especially in our church.
Well, you look just like your dad. When you came on screen, I was like, man, that looks like Don Noble right there.
You get that a lot.
I'm reminded of him every day I shave. Every time I look in the mirror, I'm reminded of Dad. In fact, all the brothers look like Dad in a certain way, but I'm the one that looks closest to him because I know that because when I do a Zoom call with Mom, she's always just a little bit taken back by when I get on there because you can see it in her eyes. Uh, she just knows. She just knows I look just like him. Uh,
Speaking of, how is your mom doing?
she's doing good. She's 84. Uh, Lives in Fort Worth on her own. Chrissy's not too far from her, and we're grateful for that because she can be there. In a pretty good 20 minutes or 25 minutes. But she's doing well, healthy. She says, she told me the other day, she said, I just wear her out walking out to the mailbox. I said, well, Mom, you're 84. What are you wanting, to run a marathon, or tell me what you
Yeah.
want to do?
That's our dad. I'm always tired. I don't know why I'm so tired. Because you're 80. He's 84 too.
Right. And that's the way it is. I'm tired, and I'm 63, and I'll be 63 in the 20th of October. And I'm tired now, but great life, just a wonderful life. We can talk
And
about.
we were blessed, both families, to have great parents who, what you said earlier, they lived what they said. They were very faithful in it, and so great example. And I remember your mom and dad. I just I loved them. They were like second family to us, second parents to us a lot of times. Because when I worked at camp, there would be times like if there was something hard and they were there, I could always go to them for anything. And so when I went through some of my hard times, I remember them and Harold and Jeannie were there to help me when I wasn't with mom and dad.
Yeah, they were good people. We were down at Versailles camp one time, and I knew what was coming up. Y'all had done a skit, and I forget exactly what the skit was, but it had a curtain up there, and you'd throw something, and when it came back over, it was bigger than it ever was. And you remember that? Y'all
Yeah.
threw a ball over, and when it came back over, it was at one size, and Mom and Dad was sitting right there in the front, and I forget how it was, but somebody threw a cup of water over, and it came back a big bucket, and I knew that was coming up, and it was right on top of Mom.
Oh,
So when it came over, I stepped out and kind of covered Mom because I knew what was coming up. And she said, "Did you know that?" And I said, "Yeah, I think that Michael or something, you or somebody had told me what was going on. But if I hadn't have, it would have soaked her." And Mom, if she gets her hair wet, she's not a happy person. Yeah, she's just not a happy person. So I knew, man, if
that
you
was
don't
our mom.
yeah, you just step up there and do what you're supposed to do. And yeah, my whole back was wet and everything because I knew that bucket was coming over.
Well, that's great.
Took one for the team.
So you say you're a grandpa now. How many grandkids you got?
All right, let's see. We got 4 grandkids. We've got three granddaughters and 1 grandson. And Amber and her husband Randy, they live in St. Petersburg, which is not real far from y'all, I don't guess. Y'all are in Pensacola, right?
It's about 8 hours.
Is it? Where
Yeah.
y'all at?
Pensacola.
Pensacola. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in
Yeah, they just missed that last hurricane that came through, but they're there, and they lived here. See, we all lived in the Atlanta area, and I worked at Delta Airlines for 20-something years, and Amber went to college at Georgia Southern and finished up her master's at Belmont here in Nashville. And so her and Randy got married in between, came up here, fell in love with the area, and started having grandkids. Our grandson and granddaughter were born here. And so Sherry, of course, we're living in Atlanta, and Sherry said, "I'm moving to Tennessee. Do you want to join me?" And I didn't have a lot of choice. I wanted to be with her, so we moved up here, and then I drove back and forth between Nashville and Atlanta for the rest of the career there at Delta. And so we spent a lot of time here, and maybe Amber will see this. I'll tell her that it's coming on, but we spent hours, and we spent a lot of money on our backyard, putting in a nice pool. And Garrett is our grandson. He's got Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and y'all pray for him. He's in a wheelchair, so he's wheelchair bound all the time. So we fixed up our backyard. We put in a pool with a lift and a ramp and all this kind of stuff. And then like 6 months later, they moved down to Florida. And so now we've got a big backyard, no kids.
He's a great kid. I follow him on Facebook, and he's always smiling. And yeah, all of you guys are there. Just enjoying.
They are. they live by the motto of choose joy, and that's what they do. They could have, you could moan and groan about it, but they choose not to. I moan and groan about it sometimes because I know the system and I know what's going on, but they don't you don't see that on them. It's kind of a heavy burden that Amber carries, knowing what's there. It doesn't see she's a physical therapist, so she's medically trained to know what's going on, and that hurts her in a way as a mother because she knows what's going on. But then we've got two granddaughters that live with us, Isabella and Aubrey, and then back in August we adopted Isabella, so she's our granddaughter and our daughter at the same time. But we didn't really advertise that. We didn't want to hurt her mom. We just wanted her to make sure she knew she had a home to go to.
Yeah.
That's kind of our life. I've been pastor of Oak Grove Baptist Church for going on 8 years, and as long as they let me stay, I guess I'll stay. They hadn't run me off yet.
Well, if you guys get to the Pensacola area, you got to give us a call. We'd love to see you guys in person.
We really thought we were down in Tampa area last week, and we thought about coming back up through Pensacola area, but there was just something that was driving us to go through Atlanta so we could catch all the traffic there. That was a nightmare. But
Yeah, we took Jamie to Mayo, and it was at that point it was supposed to be projected that it might hit Jacksonville, which where we were at. So we were crossing, and when we got about to 75 to cross over, that's when my husband said, "Okay, we might be at a dead stop once we get." But we weren't. We kept going, but we could see it as we passed over, and it was just a dead stop.
Oh,
Terrible.
well, Donnie, thank you so much for seeing us and being on here today. So
Yeah, it was good to see you
it's
again.
really good to
Really
see you.
good to see y'all too.
So and tell your wife we said hi, and
Absolutely.
to watch us on Thursday at 4 to see the Chestnut and Donnie Noble get together here and reminisce
Love
about
y'all.
that fish.
that fish.
We love our history, and I really don't think I stepped on that fish. I know you say you've got closure over it, but I've heard you talk about it 3 or 4 times on the other cast, and I don't know that you're really over it.
I just keep seeing those cowboy boots crush it. It's just,
Yeah. Well, for my part, if I did that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you don't remember.
Send me an
Why not?
address, and I'll send you a fish in the mail.
Kissing fish.
Yeah, it was a kissing fish. It wasn't a goldfish. They have to have mates. So that poor other kissing
Breathed
fish
itself to death.
was by itself,
And breathed to
and
death.
no matter how much I kissed it, it wasn't the
It
same.
wasn't the same.
Always made me wonder why you had a kissing fish.
Well, Donnie, thanks again. It was so good to see you. And
You too.
we'll be talking at all you guys later.
Thank you. We'll see y'all later. Bye bye.